The morning sun shone brightly over Seoul's busy streets in the year 2157. Hye-jin stood behind the counter of her family's quantum fuel station, one hand on her back and the other checking the station's digital display. She was 7 months pregnant, but she still came to work every day. The fuel station wasn't very big. It had 4 charging ports for flying cars and 2 special pumps for spaceships. The station's blue and white sign flashed in the morning light, showing prices for different types of fuel. Old-fashioned paper ads for hot coffee and snacks covered the store's windows. Hye-jin watched as a customer's spaceship floated down to one of the fuel ports. The ship was small and silver, like most of the local delivery vehicles. She pressed a button to start the fueling process, then walked slowly to the storage room to check on supplies. What Hye-jin didn't know was that someone was watching her from high above the city. Far up in the sky, hidden by special technology that made his ship invisible, Commander Jae-ho Kim looked down at the fuel station through his ship's viewing screen. Most people knew him as Big Shaq because he was 8 feet tall and very strong. He was supposed to be watching for space pirates, but something about this small fuel station caught his attention. "Commander," said a soft voice from his ship's computer. The AI was named Sunmei, and she had been with Jae-ho for many years. "You have been watching this station for 23 minutes. Is something wrong?" Jae-ho adjusted his seat, which was much bigger than a normal chair because of his size. "Look at the worker, Sunmei," he said, pointing at Hye-jin on the screen. "She's pregnant but doing all this work by herself, moving heavy boxes, checking equipment, helping customers." The screen zoomed in, showing a clearer picture of Hye-jin as she carried a box of snacks back to the store. She stopped for a moment to rest, wiping sweat from her forehead. "This reminds me of something," Jae-ho said quietly. His dark eyes stayed focused on the screen. Sunmei was quiet for a moment, checking her memory banks. "Your mother," she said finally. "During the resource wars, she also worked while pregnant with your sister." Jae-ho nodded slowly. The memory was clear in his mind. His mother working long hours at a similar fuel station, never complaining even when she was tired. That was 27 years ago, during the hard times when Earth was fighting over the last oil and gas supplies. A red light started flashing on Jae-ho's control panel. His ship's sensors had picked up something unusual, movement at the edge of the solar system. It could be the pirates his team had been tracking for weeks, but Jae-ho didn't look at the warning light. Instead, he watched as Hye-jin struggled to lift a heavy fuel pipe that had fallen over. "Commander," Sunmei said, her voice more urgent now. "We should check the sensor readings." "The pirates." "Yes," Jae-ho said, cutting her off. But he still didn't move. He watched Hye-jin for a few more seconds, then made a decision that would change many lives. "Sunmei," he said, his deep voice firm and clear. "Find me a safe place to land near that station." "But Commander," Sunmei protested, "the rules say we can't interact with civilians during a mission." "It's not allowed." Jae-ho smiled slightly. "Sometimes, Sunmei," he said as he started guiding his ship lower, "doing the right thing is more important than following rules." The massive spaceship, still invisible to everyone below, began its descent toward the small fuel station, where Hye-jin continued her work, unaware that her ordinary morning was about to become very extraordinary indeed. As Jae-ho's ship hovered above the fuel station, his mind traveled back to the year 2130. He was just 10 years old then, sitting on a plastic chair in another fuel station, watching his mother work. The memory was so clear it felt like yesterday. "Your heart rate is increasing, Commander," Sunmei said, her voice gentle. "Are you thinking about the resource wars again?" Jae-ho touched the control panel softly. "Yes," he said. "My mother was just like her. Sunmei, 6 months pregnant with my sister, but still working 12 hours every day." The ship's screen showed Hye-jin helping another customer. This time, it was a family in a small flying car. Their young son waved at her from the back seat, and she waved back with a tired smile. "I remember those days too," Sunmei said. Even though she was an ally, she had been with Jai-ho's family since the wars. Your mother never complained, not even during the fuel riots. Jai-ho closed his eyes for a moment. The memories came faster now. He saw angry crowds outside the station, people fighting over the last drops of old-style gasoline. His mother had stood at the door, brave and calm, telling everyone to form a line. She was small, but something about her strength made even the angriest people listen. "Pull up the mission files, Sunme," Jai-ho said suddenly. "Show me what we know about the pirates." The screen split in two. One side still showed He-jin at her station, while the other displayed pictures and information about space pirates who had been attacking fuel stations across Asia. "Captain Min-ki's group has hit 12 stations in the past month," Sunmai reported. "They take the quantum fuel and sell it on the black market. 3 workers have been hurt." Jai-ho studied the pictures carefully. The pirates always chose small stations, ones that didn't have much security, ones just like He-jin's. "They're going to target this station soon," he said quietly. "Look at the pattern. Sunmai. It fits all their usual choices." Above them, space traffic moved in regular lines. Flying cars and small spaceships followed the sky lanes, their lights blinking in the morning sun. Everything looked peaceful, but Jai-ho knew that somewhere up there, the pirates were watching too. His ship's computer beeped again, warning him about the strange movements at the edge of the solar system. But now Jai-ho had another reason to stay near the fuel station. It wasn't just about helping one pregnant worker anymore. This was about stopping history from repeating itself. "Commander," Sunmai said, "Officer Dae-sung is calling. He wants to know why we haven't checked those sensor readings yet." Jai-ho watched as He-jin started cleaning the fuel pumps. Her movements were slow but careful, just like his mother's had been. "Tell him I'm investigating a possible pirate target," Jai-ho said. And Sunmai, "Yes, Commander. Start scanning all ships that come near this station. I want to know everyone who stops here for fuel." "That's not part of our mission," Sunmai reminded him. "We're supposed to be watching the outer system borders." Jai-ho smiled, remembering how his mother had broken the rules during the wars, giving extra fuel to families with children, even when it wasn't allowed. "Sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones in our mission files," he said. "They're the ones we choose to fight." Below them, He-jin looked up at the sky for a moment, as if she could sense she was being watched. The morning sun made her face glow, and she put one hand on her belly, protecting her unborn child. She had no idea that high above her, one of the galaxy's most famous warriors had just appointed himself as her guardian. Officer Dae-sung's face appeared on Jai-ho's screen, looking worried. He was Jai-ho's best friend and had been for 15 years. "Commander, what are you doing? The sensors show your ship is dropping altitude." Jai-ho looked at the other screen, where He-jin was trying to move a heavy box of engine parts. She stopped several times to catch her breath. "I'm going to land," he said simply. "Land?" Dae-sung's eyes went wide. "But we're on a stealth mission. We can't interact with civilians." "The rules. Sometimes rules need to be broken," Jai-ho said. He pressed buttons on his control panel, looking for a good landing spot behind the fuel station. Sun's voice joined the conversation. "Commander, I agree with Officer Dae-sung. Our orders are clear. We should stay hidden and watch for the pirates." Jai-ho watched as He-jin dropped the box. Tools scattered across the ground. She bent down slowly to pick them up, one hand on her back to support her pregnant belly. "Look at the station's security cameras," Jai-ho told them. "There are none. No protection shields either. It's exactly the kind of place the pirates will attack. Then we should report it and let the local police handle it," Dae-sung said. But his voice was softer now. He could see what Jai-ho was seeing. Jai-ho shook his head. "Local police can't stop these pirates. You know that. They have military-grade weapons. They've hurt people at other stations." He-jin was now helping an elderly customer with their ship's fuel connection. Even though she was tired, she smiled and spoke kindly to them. just like his mother had done. If I land this ship, Jai-Ho said slowly, I'll be breaking at least 6 different rules. I know that, but if I don't land, and the pirates attack this station, he let the sentence hang in the air. Dae-sung sighed. You're thinking about your mother again, aren't you? Yes. Jae-ho started the landing sequence. His massive ship, still invisible, moved toward the empty lot behind the station. During the resource wars, no one helped her. No one protected her. I won't let that happen again. Sunmi's voice was quiet but firm. Commander, if you do this, I'll have to put it in the official report. I know. Jae-ho checked the landing area one more time. Put it in the report. Say I broke protocol. Say I disobeyed orders. But also write down why. The ship's engines hummed softly as they descended. On the ground, a few dead leaves moved in the wind from the invisible ship. And why did you break the rules, Commander? Sunmi asked, though she already knew the answer. Jai-ho watched as Ho-jin went back to moving the heavy box, struggling with each step, because sometimes protecting people is more important than following rules. Because everyone deserves help when they need it. Because, he paused, thinking of his mother again. Because it's what's right. The ship touched the ground gently. Jae-ho stood up, his 8-foot frame filling the cockpit. He put on his armored suit, checking that his weapons were set to stun, not kill. Dae-sung, he said to his friend's worried face on the screen, keep watching the outer system. If the pirates show up, I want to know right away. And what should I tell headquarters when they ask why you landed? Jai-ho smiled slightly as he walked to the ship's door. Tell them Big Shaq is doing what he always does, protecting people who need help. The door opened with a soft hiss. Jae-ho took a deep breath and stepped out, knowing that in a few moments he would either make a terrible mistake or change someone's life for the better. Either way, there was no turning back now. Ho-jin was checking the fuel prices on her digital display when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. They were unlike anything she had ever heard before. Each step made the ground shake slightly. She turned around slowly, and her eyes went wide. There, standing in her station's parking lot, was the biggest person she had ever seen. He was 8 feet tall and wore silver armor that gleamed in the morning sun. A badge on his chest showed he was from the Galactic Defense Force. Ho-jin's hand moved to her belly automatically, protecting her unborn child. Her other hand reached for the emergency button under the counter. Please don't be afraid, the giant said in perfect Korean. His voice was deep but gentle. I am Commander Jae-ho Kim. Most people call me Big Shaq. He bowed respectfully, following proper Korean custom. Ho-jin's finger stopped just above the emergency button. She had heard of Big Shaq. Everyone had. He was famous for protecting Earth's space lanes from pirates and criminals. But what was he doing at her small fuel station? She started to say. But then a customer's spaceship landed at one of the fuel ports. The ship was large, and she knew she would have to lift the heavy fuel connector to reach its tank. Jai-ho noticed her looking at the ship. Let me help you with that, he said. He walked to the fuel port, his steps careful and measured now. The customers in the spaceship stared in amazement as the legendary Big Shaq picked up the heavy fuel connector like it was made of paper. He connected it to their ship perfectly, as if he had done this job 1,000 times before. You know how to work at a fuel station? Ho-jin asked, surprised. Jai-ho smiled as he pressed the buttons to start the fueling process. My mother worked at one, just like this. I used to help her when I was young. He looked at the fuel gauge, though the technology was different back then. More ships started landing at the station. Word was spreading quickly that Big Shaq himself was working there. Some customers took pictures with their phones. Others just stared in wonder as the giant warrior operated the fuel pumps with careful precision. But why are you helping me? Ho-jin asked between customers. Surely the Galactic Defense Force has more important things to do. Jai-ho connected another fuel line before answering. Nothing is more important than helping people who need it, he said. Then he looked at her seriously. And there might be another reason. But we should talk about that when there are fewer people around. He-Jin noticed that despite his size and strength, Jae-ho was incredibly gentle with all the equipment. He treated the old fuel pumps with respect, just like her father had taught her to do. A child from one of the customer ships walked up to Jae-ho, looking up at him in wonder. "Are you really big, Shaq?" the boy asked. "Yes," Jae-ho said, kneeling down to be closer to the child's level. Even kneeling, he was still much taller than the boy. "But today, I'm just helping Miss He-Jin with her work." As the morning went on, He-Jin found herself relaxing more and more. There was something comforting about Jae-ho's presence, despite his enormous size. He reminded her of the old stories her grandmother used to tell about guardian spirits who would appear to help people in need. What she didn't notice was how Jae-ho kept looking at the sky between customers, his eyes scanning for any signs of danger, or how his hand would sometimes move to the weapon at his side when unknown ships flew too close to the station. When the morning rush ended, He-Jin and Jae-ho sat inside the small station office. The afternoon sun made warm patches of light on the floor through the window. Jae-ho had to bend down to fit through the door, and his chair creaked under his weight. "There's something I need to tell you," Jae-ho said, his deep voice serious. "I didn't come here by accident." He-Jin poured them both cups of tea, her hand steady despite her tiredness. "I thought there might be more to it," she said. "The famous Big Shaq doesn't just appear at small fuel stations to help pregnant women." Jae-ho's communicator beeped softly. He looked at it, then back at He-Jin. "Have you heard about the recent attacks on fuel stations?" He-Jin nodded. The news said pirates were stealing quantum fuel, but that was all in other cities, far from here. "Not as far as you think," Jae-ho said. He pressed a button on his communicator, and a map appeared in the air between them. Red dots marked all the places where pirates had attacked. The dots made a clear pattern, moving closer and closer to Seoul. "The pirates are led by a man named Captain Min-ki," Jae-ho explained. He showed He-Jin a picture of a thin man with cold eyes. "He used to work for the Galactic Defense Force, so he knows how we think, how we protect things." He-Jin looked at the map again. Her station was exactly where the next red dot should be. "You think they're coming here?" she said quietly. "Yes." Jae-ho's voice was gentle but firm. "They always choose small stations, places without many security cameras or guards, places where they think people can't fight back." The office felt very quiet. Outside, they could hear the soft hum of passing ships and the beeping of fuel pumps. "What do they do to the people at the stations?" He-Jin asked. Jae-ho's face grew dark. "Usually they just tie people up and steal the fuel. But sometimes, if people resist." He didn't finish the sentence. He-Jin put one hand on her belly, thinking about her unborn child. "So that's why you came? To protect us?" "Yes," Jae-ho said. Then he smiled slightly. "Though helping you with the heavy lifting was also important. My mother taught me that even small kindnesses matter." Suddenly, Jae-ho's communicator made a loud alert sound. His friend Dae-sung's face appeared in the air. "Commander," Dae-sung said urgently, "we've detected 3 ships entering Earth's atmosphere. They're using fake identification codes." Jae-ho stood up quickly, his head almost touching the office ceiling. "How long?" 20 minutes, maybe less," Dae-sung replied. "They're trying to look like regular cargo ships, but their energy signatures match Min-ki's fleet." He-Jin stood up too, her face determined. "What do you need me to do?" Jae-ho looked at her with surprise and respect. "You want to help. It will be dangerous." "This is my family station," He-Jin said firmly. "My grandfather built it. My father improved it. I know every pipe, every wire, every safety system. And I won't let pirates take it from us." Jae-ho nodded, understanding in his eyes. He saw the same strength in her that he had seen in his mother years ago. "Then let's get ready," he said. "We don't have much time." 3 large ships appeared in the sky above the fuel station. They looked like normal cargo ships, painted plain gray and brown. But Jai-ho knew better. These were Captain Min-ki's pirate ships, and they had come to steal the quantum fuel. "Are you ready?" Jai-ho asked He-jin. They had spent the last 15 minutes preparing the station's defenses. He-jin nodded. She sat at the station's control panel, which she had modified in ways the pirates wouldn't expect. "All fuel lines are set exactly as you said." Jai-ho stood in front of the station, his massive frame clearly visible to the approaching ships. He wanted them to see him. He wanted them to know this wouldn't be an easy target. The first pirate ship landed, pretending to be a regular customer. 5 men stepped out, trying to look normal but wearing thick jackets that could hide weapons. When they saw Big Shaq standing there, they stopped walking. "This station is under Galactic Defense Force protection," Jai-ho said loudly. "Turn around and leave." A familiar thin man stepped out of the second ship. It was Captain Min-ki himself. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Commander Kim," he said, "what a surprise. We're just here for fuel. No need for trouble." "We both know that's not true," Jai-ho replied. His hand rested on his weapon, but he didn't draw it yet. Min-ki's smile disappeared. He gave a signal, and suddenly 20 pirates pulled out energy guns from under their jackets. They surrounded the station quickly, pointing their weapons at Jai-ho. "Even you can't fight all of us," Min-ki said. "Step aside. We'll take the fuel and go. Nobody needs to get hurt." Jai-ho didn't move. "Last warning. Leave now." Min-ki sighed and raised his hand to signal his men to attack. But before he could drop his hand, He-jin pressed a button on her control panel. All the fuel lines in the station came alive at once. They sprayed quantum fuel in a special pattern that Jai-ho had planned. The liquid fuel created a barrier between the pirates and the station. More importantly, it made the ground very slippery. Several pirates fell as they tried to move forward. Others had to drop their weapons to keep their balance. Jai-ho moved fast, much faster than someone his size should be able to move. In seconds, he had taken down 5 pirates who couldn't stand properly on the slippery ground. "Shoot him," Min-ki shouted, but He-jin pressed another button. The station's lights suddenly became blindingly bright, specially adjusted to reflect off the fuel spray. The pirates couldn't see well enough to aim. Jai-ho's communicator crackled. "Reinforcements have arrived," Commander Dae-sung's voice said. 3 Galactic Defense Force ships appeared in the sky, their weapons pointed at the pirate ships. Min-ki looked around wildly. His perfect plan had fallen apart. His men were slipping and falling, half of them already captured by Jai-ho. They couldn't shoot accurately because of the lights and fuel spray. And now they were trapped by military ships above. "Surrender, Min-ki," Jai-ho said calmly, walking toward the pirate captain. "Your raid is over." Min-ki pulled out a small weapon and pointed it at the station's office where He-jin was. But before he could shoot, a stream of quantum fuel hit him directly in the face. He-jin had aimed the fuel line perfectly. Jai-ho reached the spluttering pirate captain in 2 long steps and lifted him off the ground with one hand. "I told you," he said quietly, "this station is protected." The sun was setting over Seoul when the last police ship left the fuel station. The captured pirates were gone, taken to a secure facility. Captain Min-ki and his crew would face justice for their crimes. The spilled quantum fuel had been cleaned up, leaving no trace of the battle that had happened just hours ago. He-jin and Jai-ho sat on a bench outside the station, watching the evening traffic move through the sky lanes above them. The station was closed early today, something that hadn't happened in 20 years. "Thank you," He-jin said, breaking the comfortable silence. "You saved more than just the station today." Jai-ho looked at her, his large frame somehow seeming less intimidating now. "You saved it too," he said. "Your knowledge of the station's systems made our plan work. I just provided the distraction." He-jin smiled, remembering how the pirates had slipped and fallen in the fuel spray she had controlled. "We made a good team," she said. Yes, Jaiho agreed. Just like my mother, and I used to be. He paused, looking at the old station sign that flickered in the evening light. Would you like to hear about her? He-jin nodded, settling more comfortably on the bench. During the resource wars, Jaiho began. My mother ran a station much like this one. I was young, but I remember how hard she worked. She was pregnant with my sister at the time. He smiled at the memory. People told her to stop working, to stay home. But she knew the station was important to the community. Like this station is to our neighborhood. He-jin said softly. Exactly. Jaiho's voice grew quieter. One day, some bad people came to steal fuel. Back then, we didn't have quantum fuel. It was old-style gasoline, very rare and valuable. My mother faced them alone. He-jin listened carefully, one hand resting on her belly where her baby moved gently. She couldn't fight them, Jaiho continued, but she was clever. She used the station's systems, just like you did today. She sprayed them with water from the cleaning hoses, ruined their weapons. She locked them in the storeroom until help came. Is that why you joined the Galactic Defense Force? He-jin asked. To protect people like she did. Jaiho nodded slowly. Yes, but today taught me something important. Sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones with weapons or armor. Sometimes they're the ones who keep working hard every day, who don't give up, who protect what matters to them. The evening grew darker, and the station's lights came on automatically. They cast a warm glow over the two unlikely friends. When I saw you working here, Jaiho said, I thought I was seeing my mother again. The same strength, the same dedication. I had to help. But in the end, you didn't really need my protection. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you already were. He-jin felt tears in her eyes, but they were happy tears. Your mother would be proud of you, she said, not just for being Big Shaq, the famous warrior, but for being kind, for helping people who need it. Jaiho smiled, and for a moment, he wasn't the legendary commander of the Galactic Defense Force. He was just a son who had learned well from his mother's example. 6 months had passed since the battle at the fuel station. The morning sun shone brightly on the station's new sign, which now read, He-jin and Family Quantum Fuel, protected by GDF. The letters gleamed in gold against the blue background. Inside the station's office, He-jin sat in a comfortable chair, holding her newborn daughter. The baby was just 2 weeks old, with bright eyes and tiny hands that reached for everything. He-jin had named her Yoonji, which meant brave and wise. It seemed right after everything that had happened. The office door opened, and Jaiho had to bend down to enter, just as he always did. But today he wasn't wearing his combat armor. Instead, he wore the formal uniform of a Galactic Defense Force station commander. He had been assigned permanently to Earth's defense network, with his headquarters right here in Seoul. Good morning, he said softly, trying not to wake the sleeping Yoonji. He placed a small package on the desk, a gift for the little one. He-jin opened the package carefully. Inside was a tiny blanket, made from the same special material as Galactic Defense Force uniforms. It was soft but strong, just like the baby's mother. The station feels different now, He-jin said, looking around. After the battle, the Galactic Defense Force had helped upgrade the station's security. New shields protected the fuel tanks. Better computers controlled the fuel lines. But they had kept the old-fashioned paper ads in the windows, just the way He-jin's father had liked them. Different, but better, Jaiho agreed. He looked at the security screens that showed ships landing safely at the fuel ports. No pirates have attacked any stations in Seoul since that day. They know better now. He-jin smiled. Because of Big Shaq? No, Jaiho said. Because they learned that even small stations can be strong. That people who work hard and protect what they love are not easy targets. Baby Yoonji woke up and looked at Jaiho with curious eyes. She wasn't afraid of his huge size. Instead, she reached up with her tiny hands, trying to grab his finger when he held it out to her. She's brave. Jai-ho said, smiling, like her mother. And kind, He-jin added, like her uncle Jae-ho. Jai-ho looked surprised. Uncle. Of course, He-jin said firmly. Your family now. You protected us when we needed help. You visit every week. You even brought her a blanket made from special uniform material. Outside, customers went about their day, getting fuel for their ships and buying snacks from the store. Many of them knew the story of how Big Shaq had helped stop the pirates. The story had spread across Seoul, then across Korea, and finally across Earth. It reminded people that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism started with simple kindness. I have to go check the defense network, Jai-ho said, standing carefully so he wouldn't bump his head on the ceiling. But I'll be back for dinner on Sunday. Your mother said she's making her special soup. We'll be waiting, He-jin said. Baby Yoonji made a happy sound, as if she was looking forward to it too. As Jai-ho walked out of the station, he smiled at the sign above the door. His mother would have loved this place, he thought. She would have understood that true strength wasn't always about size or weapons or fame. Sometimes it was about helping others, protecting what mattered, and becoming part of a family you never expected to find.